The sky was burning. Captain Reyes gripped the edge of the command chair as explosions shattered the calm around the fleet. Alien warships swarmed in relentless waves, their weapons tearing through Earth's defenses. The hum of engines and the sharp crack of plasma fire filled the bridge. Outside, ships were going dark one after another, drifting like broken husks in the void. The enemy was advancing faster than anyone could stop them. "Shields are failing," the communications officer reported, voice tight with tension. "We're losing power in Sector 7. Hull breaches detected." Reyes' jaw clenched. "Can we hold?" Her voice barely concealed the doubt gnawing inside her. She scanned the flickering holograms displaying the battle. Human forces were stretched thin, their numbers dwindling. Supplies were low. Morale was worse. "Negative," came the grim reply from the tactical officer. "They've got us outflanked. The colonies are falling. We don't have the strength to stop the advance." Reyes swallowed hard. This wasn't just another battle. This was the moment where everything could be lost. She thought of the millions depending on them, the families, the children, the hopes of an entire species. Yet here they were, outgunned and overwhelmed. A crackle burst through the radio. Static first, then a voice, barely audible but filled with urgency. "This is Captain Reyes. To anyone out there, we are beaten, our last lines are breaking. Earth will fall if no help arrives." The message cut off, swallowed by interference. No one answered. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Below the chaos of space, on a distant jungle planet, something stirred. Buried beneath thick vines and centuries of neglect, an enormous metal form lay silent. Covered in rust and moss, it had become part of the wilderness. To most, it was forgotten, a failed experiment, a relic of a bygone era. The Earth prototype war Mech. Built to be the ultimate defense, it had been deemed too costly and impractical, abandoned before it could prove its worth. But now, in the fading light of an endless war, that silence was about to break. Commander Harlow stood on the edge of the dense jungle, her team exhausted but resolute. She stared at the overgrown clearing ahead, where old satellite scans had shown the Mech's resting place. For months, she had argued the risks, the possibility of success against the overwhelming odds. No one wanted to believe in a forgotten machine, but hope was a luxury they no longer had. "The fleet is falling apart," she said quietly to her second-in-command. "If this doesn't work, then there is nothing left." The air was thick with humidity and the sounds of distant wildlife. But here, the jungle seemed unnaturally still, as if holding its breath. The team moved forward, hacking through vines and debris, their boots sinking into soft earth. Finally, the Mech appeared, half buried, towering like a giant fallen god. Harlow approached the cockpit hatch, fingers trembling. Years of maintenance manuals, schematics, and years of theory all hinged on this moment. She activated the override panel and prayed the systems still held power. The Mech groaned, ancient hydraulics stirring as circuits flickered to life. A plume of steam hissed into the humid air. Then, slowly, its eyes flared red, a warning and a promise. The forgotten Titan had awakened. Back in orbit, the remaining human forces barely noticed the distant signal. But somewhere far away from the battlefield, a silent hope began to take shape. The battle was lost until Earth's prototype war Mech activated. Deep within the dense jungle, the air was thick with humidity and the scent of earth and decay. The Mech stood half buried, its massive frame swallowed by vines and moss, a silent giant forgotten by time. The once sleek metal was scarred and pitted, its paint faded and peeling. It was a relic, an artifact of a war long thought lost, a secret buried beneath layers of green. Commander Harlow's team moved cautiously around the towering machine. Every step they took stirred up the sounds of the jungle, distant birds, the rustle of leaves, and the steady drip of moisture. But beneath the natural symphony was the unmistakable hum of ancient technology beginning to stir. The mech's core still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, faint but persistent. No one believed it could still work, Harlow murmured. They called it a failure, too expensive, too complicated. They said we had wasted time and resources on something no longer relevant. But if this machine wakes up, maybe we still have a chance. The others nodded, faces illuminated by the flickering glow from the mech's core. The jungle was no friend here. Every moment they spent exposed was a risk. The enemy had scouts everywhere, and the war had taught them that desperation bred cruelty. A young technician knelt beside the cockpit, wiping years of grime from the control panel. "Power systems are holding," she said, voice steady despite the tension. "But the auxiliary batteries are weak. We'll need to get it back online fully before it can move." Harlow's gaze swept the horizon. "We don't have long. The battle isn't waiting for us. Every minute Earth's defenses crumble." The team set to work, coordinating their efforts like a well-oiled machine. Engineers checked circuit boards and power conduits, patching broken lines and bypassing damaged nodes. Slowly, the mech responded. Lights blinked on, screens flickered, and the mechanical heartbeat grew stronger. Outside, the jungle seemed to react as well. A sudden gust rustled the canopy. Birds took flight, and somewhere distant, a roar echoed. A warning, or perhaps a promise. But beneath the growing hum, an unease settled over the team. This was no longer a simple machine. It was a weapon with a purpose. An awakening, it meant stepping into the unknown. Harlow wiped sweat from her brow. This mech was designed to be a fortress, a guardian. It was built to protect us from threats we could barely imagine. But it's been asleep for too long. The systems may fail, or worse, the enemy might be waiting. The thought hung heavy in the air. But retreat was no longer an option. As night fell, the team gathered around the mech's cockpit. Harlow climbed inside, feeling the weight of history and responsibility pressed down on her. The controls were cold but familiar, a testament to Earth's lost technology. She activated the main console. Lights flickered, systems hummed. The mech's red eyes ignited, cutting through the darkness like beacons. Outside, the jungle shadows danced in the glow. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The mech shifted, gears grinding after years of silence. Steam hissed from joints as the giant machine flexed its massive limbs. A voice crackled over the comm from the fleet above. Unidentified signal detected. Power signature massive. Could it be? Harlow's heart raced. It's the mech. It's alive. For the first time in months, a spark of hope ignited. The forgotten war machine was awakening, and with it, the chance to turn the tide. But the enemy would not wait. Scanners picked up approaching ships, their weapons locked on the jungle's edge. The battle was about to reach them, here and now. Harlow took a deep breath. Prepare for combat readiness. This is just the beginning. The mech stood tall, a giant reborn from the shadows of defeat. The jungle had kept it secret, but now it would be the battleground for humanity's last stand. And somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of rust and vines, the prototype war mech was ready to fight. Commander Harlow stood before the flickering holographic map in the war room, her eyes sharp but weary. The situation was grim. Earth's fleets were shattered, colonies overrun, and the enemy showed no mercy. The last transmissions from Captain Reyes had all but confirmed it. Humanity was on the brink of extinction. Yet there was one hope, a forgotten war machine buried in the jungle, a relic from a time when Earth still dreamed of victory. But waking it would mean risking everything. Her superiors watched silently, faces etched with doubt and exhaustion. "It's a desperate gamble," General Pierce finally said. "The mech systems are decades old. We don't know if it will even move." Harlow met his gaze without flinching. "If we don't try, there won't be a tomorrow to worry about. This mech is our last shot." The council murmured among themselves, weighing the risks. Finally, with heavy reluctance, permission was granted. Harlow was given command of a small, elite team tasked with reaching the mech and activating it before the enemy's next wave arrived. The night before the mission, Harlow couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her quarters, the weight of responsibility pressing down. This wasn't just about machinery or strategy. It was about lives, the future of humanity itself. She thought of her crew, of the families lost in this war, and of those still clinging to hope. Morning came with a harsh clarity. The team assembled, faces hardened by battle, but burning with quiet determination. They were soldiers, engineers, and technicians, all aware that this mission was more than a rescue. It was a gamble on a ghost. Their transport dropped them at the jungle's edge. The air was thick, heavy with moisture and silence, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Harlow led the way, the team cutting through underbrush and tangled vines. Each step was careful, measured. They knew the enemy could be lurking anywhere. Hours passed under the oppressive canopy. The further they ventured, the more oppressive the jungle became. Strange sounds echoed, unfamiliar and unnerving. The mech remained their only beacon of hope, a legend they prayed was real. Finally, they reached the clearing. There it was, the giant, half-buried war mech, slumped like a sleeping titan. Its metal frame was scarred but still imposing. Vines clung to its joints, and moss covered the faded insignia on its chest. Harlow approached the cockpit hatch, her hand steady despite the moment's gravity. She keyed in the override codes. The ancient lock clicked, and with a hiss, the hatch began to rise. Inside, dust motes danced in the filtered sunlight. Technicians immediately set to work, checking systems and power levels. The mech's core hummed faintly, a heartbeat waiting to surge. But the longer they worked, the more they realized how fragile the machine had become. Corrosion had spread deep into critical circuits, and vital components were missing or damaged. "We can't just flip a switch," said Lieutenant Keene, the lead engineer. "We'll need to jury-rig repairs, reroute power, and hope the old programming still holds." Harlow nodded. "We don't have the luxury of time. Every minute the enemy advances, Earth's defenses weaken." Outside the clearing, distant thuds shook the earth. Enemy patrols were close. The tension was unbearable. Every sound could mean discovery, every delay a death sentence. Then came the first signs of life. The mech systems flickered, lights pulsed weakly, and the cockpit screens sputtered on. Red warning indicators flashed, then steadied. The mech was waking, but the revival was anything but smooth. Alarms blared as emergency protocols kicked in. The mech's joints locked, then slowly began to move with heavy groans. The machine's ancient hydraulics protested against years of stillness. Harlow climbed inside, her fingers flying over the controls. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought to bring the mech fully online. The hum grew louder, the red eyes flaring to life, cutting through the dim cockpit with eerie intensity. "We're operational," she announced over comms. But this is only the beginning. Outside, the jungle was still watching. The mech was no longer just a forgotten relic. It was humanity's last stand. The team braced themselves for what was to come. The enemy would not wait. Harlow took a deep breath. "Prepare for departure. We move at first light." The mission to awaken the giant was a gamble, but failure was no longer an option. The war was lost until Earth's prototype war mech activated. The cockpit was cramped and cold, the controls a tangled web of buttons, levers, and glowing screens. Commander Harlow settled into the pilot's seat, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Around her, technicians worked feverishly, monitoring systems that flickered unpredictably. The mech was alive, but barely. Years of neglect had taken their toll, and every movement felt like a gamble. Power levels are fluctuating, Lieutenant Keene reported. Core is stable, but the auxiliary systems are unstable. We're running on reserves. Harlow nodded. We don't have the luxury of perfect conditions. We move now or lose everything. She gripped the main control stick and initiated the startup sequence. The mech groaned as ancient servos rumbled to life. Steam hissed from joints locked in place for decades, and gears creaked under the strain. Outside, the jungle canopy trembled as the machine flexed its massive limbs for the first time in years. Red lights flickered along the mech's frame, and its eyes, a deep burning red, pierced the shadows of the cockpit. The glow was both terrifying and hopeful. It was a symbol of forgotten technology, reborn in a moment of desperation. Systems nominal. The AI assistant's voice echoed softly through the cockpit. Pilot control interface active. Ready for commands. Harlow exhaled slowly. Let's move. Outside, the jungle loomed, dense and unforgiving. The mech's first steps were heavy and uncertain, like a newborn learning to walk. Each movement sent vibrations through the earth, cracking twigs and stirring wildlife. For a moment, silence fell as the mech found its balance. But the peace was short-lived. A sudden burst of energy flared from the horizon. Enemy scouts, alerted by the mech's activation, closed in fast. Missiles streaked through the sky, locking onto the giant machine. Alarms blared in the cockpit. Incoming fire. Keene shouted. Shields at 50% and dropping. Harlow tightened her grip. The mech's armor, though thick and reinforced, wasn't invincible. Every hit was a test of endurance. She moved with purpose, recalling the training simulations she'd run countless times. But nothing could prepare her for the real thing. The mech swung an arm, deflecting a volley of plasma blasts. The impact sent shockwaves through the cockpit. The ground beneath cracked as the mech stomped forward, crushing undergrowth and small trees. The enemy hesitated, surprised by the sudden resistance. Keep it steady, Harlow ordered. We need to buy time. Her voice was calm but urgent. The team outside radioed in real-time updates, coordinating troop movements with the mech's advances. It was a dance of survival, human strategy fused with machine power. Despite the damage, the mech pressed on. Its movements grew more fluid, less mechanical, as systems adjusted. Steam vents hissed, cooling overheated joints. The cockpit screens flickered with diagnostics, showing vital signs improving. Harlow allowed herself a brief moment of hope. But the enemy was relentless. Heavy artillery emerged on the ridge, targeting the mech with concentrated fire. The ground shook as shells exploded around it, sending clouds of dust and debris into the air. Shields failing. Keene's voice was strained. Structural integrity compromised. The mech's frame groaned ominously, a deep metallic creak echoing through the cockpit. Harlow's heart pounded, but she refused to surrender. We hold here, she commanded. For Earth. With precise control, she maneuvered the mech to intercept the enemy artillery. A massive fist slammed into the hillside, sending rocks and dirt tumbling down. The shockwave knocked several enemy units off balance. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in months, humanity had a fighting chance. The prototype war mech was no longer a forgotten relic. It was a guardian reborn, a silent promise that Earth would not fall without a fight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the battlefield, Harlow steadied her breath and prepared for the next wave. The war was raging on, but now, hope marched with iron feet. The battlefield was a chaotic symphony of noise, smoke, and flashing lights. Explosions ripped through the jungle's edge as enemy forces scrambled to regroup. But at the heart of it all, the war mech stood as a towering sentinel, its glowing red eyes cutting through the haze. Commander Harlow's voice was steady as she issued commands from the cockpit, each movement of the massive machine deliberate and precise. "Shields are stabilizing," Lieutenant Keane reported, his voice a rare note of optimism. "Systems are responding better than expected. The core is holding." Harlow allowed herself a brief nod. The mech was more than metal and wires. It was a symbol, a reminder that humanity's ingenuity and will to survive had not been extinguished. But there was no time for celebration. The enemy was regrouping, and reinforcements were already approaching. Enemy battalions inbound, the communications officer warned. Multiple squads moving through the eastern ridge. Harlow's gaze shifted to the hollow map flickering before her. The mech's position was critical. If the enemy pushed through here, Earth's last stronghold in the sector would collapse. She clenched her fists around the control handles. "We hold this line, no matter the cost." Outside, the mech's massive feet tore into the earth as it repositioned. Each step crushed trees and sent birds scattering into the twilight sky. The jungle was no place for a machine like this, but it had to adapt, and fast. The mech's thick armor absorbed incoming fire, though every hit left a jarring thud that reverberated through the cockpit. Suddenly, the enemy unleashed a new weapon, a swarm of drones small and fast, equipped with cutting-edge weaponry designed to disable large targets. They darted like angry hornets, firing plasma bolts that scorched the mech's armor. "Drones incoming, 20 degrees starboard," Keane shouted. "They're fast and coordinated." Harlow's eyes narrowed. She adjusted the mech's targeting systems, activating the built-in pulse cannon. A deep hum filled the cockpit as energy built up, then released in a powerful shockwave. The swarm of drones scattered, several falling from the sky in sparks and smoke. "Keep firing," Harlow commanded. "We can't let them breach our defenses." The battle intensified. Explosions rocked the ground as enemy artillery launched salvo after salvo. The mech responded with crushing blows and precise strikes. Trees fell under its fists, and the earth trembled with every step. Amidst the chaos, a sudden jolt shook the cockpit violently. Warning lights flashed as a plasma bolt struck the mech's left arm. The damage was severe. Hydraulics hissed and sputtered, and the arm twitched uncontrollably. "We've taken critical damage to the left arm," Keane reported urgently. "Mobility may be affected." Harlow gritted her teeth. "I'll compensate with the right. Keep systems patched and ready." With grim determination, she swung the mech's right arm in a sweeping arc, knocking down enemy vehicles and clearing a path. The team outside pressed forward, inspired by the mech's relentless advance. But the enemy wasn't finished. From the treeline, a massive siege crawler appeared, an armored behemoth bristling with heavy cannons. Its arrival signaled a new level of threat. "Siege crawler detected," the tactical officer reported. "Heavy artillery incoming." Harlow's mind raced. The mech was powerful but not invincible. Taking on the crawler head-on would be risky. "We need to outmaneuver it," she said. "Use the terrain, lead it into the ravine." The mech lumbered forward, dodging artillery shells and returning fire. The battle turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the mech weaving between trees and over rocks, slowly drawing the crawler toward a narrow ravine. At the critical moment, the mech leapt, a feat of engineering and raw power, as it slammed into the crawler from above. The impact sent the enemy vehicle tumbling into the ravine, its weapons silenced. A cheer crackled over the comms from the ground troops. Siege crawler down. Mechs holding strong. Harlow allowed herself a brief smile. This victory was hard-won, but it was a sign. Earth's Guardian was fighting back. As night deepened, the battlefield grew quieter. The mech stood tall amid the shattered remains of the fight, its systems battered but operational. Commander Harlow's voice broke the silence. "We've bought time," she said. "But the war is far from over." Somewhere deep in the jungle, the ancient war machine's core pulsed steadily, a beacon of hope against the darkness. Humanity's prototype war mech was alive, fighting, and refusing to be forgotten. The jungle was eerily silent as dawn broke over the battlefield. Commander Harlow sat in the cockpit of the war mech, her muscles tense and her mind racing. The previous night's fight had been brutal, but the mech had held firm. Still, the damage was real. The left arm's hydraulics were barely functional, and internal diagnostics warned of overheating in multiple systems. Lieutenant Keen's voice came through the comms, calm but urgent. "We're running low on power reserves. The core is stable, but draining faster than anticipated. We need to find a way to recharge or risk shutting down in the middle of combat." Harlow's eyes scanned the holomap projected before her. The nearest supply depot was miles away, deep in contested territory. The enemy had set up heavy patrols to prevent any reinforcement or resupply. Yet it was the only option. "We have to get there," she said. "If we don't, this mech becomes a glorified tomb." Outside, the jungle seemed to close in, the dense foliage casting long shadows across the ground. The mech's heavy footsteps left deep impressions in the earth as it moved forward. Every movement was calculated, every step a balance between speed and caution. Suddenly, the sensors picked up movement. Enemy scouts, fast and silent, flanked the mech's path. Their weapons were small but deadly, designed to disable key systems quickly. The cockpit alarms blared. "Enemy scouts closing in," Keen warned. "They're trying to hack into our control systems." Harlow's fingers flew over the controls, activating countermeasures. The mech's onboard AI deployed electronic defenses, scrambling enemy signals. Still, the threat was real. "Engage defense protocol," she ordered. The mech's arms swung with precision, neutralizing the scouts before they could get close. The fight was swift, but it drained precious energy. After the skirmish, the team pressed onward. The supply depot was now visible on the holomap, a distant glow on the horizon. But the path was perilous. The enemy had rigged the jungle with traps, hidden mines and energy nets designed to stop any advance. Harlow's heart pounded as the mech carefully navigated the maze of dangers. One wrong step could spell disaster. Then, an explosion rocked the ground beneath the mech's right foot. The machine shuddered, but the armor held. A mine detonated, sending shock waves through the frame. Systems flickered, but the mech remained operational. "Damage report," Harlow demanded. "Right leg armor compromised," Keen replied. "Mobility reduced by 20%. "We can't slow down," Harlow said firmly. "Not now." The supply depot loomed closer, but enemy reinforcements were converging fast. Artillery fire streaked across the sky, and heavy fighters buzzed overhead. "Anti-aircraft units incoming," the tactical officer warned. Harlow activated the mech's anti-air defenses. Twin pulse cannons hummed to life, sending bursts of energy into the sky. Several enemy fighters erupted in flames, crashing into the jungle canopy. The battle for the supply depot was fierce. The mech's frame bore the scars of combat, dents, scorch marks, and scorch paint, but it pushed forward, each strike a statement of defiance. At last, the mech reached the depot. Engineers and soldiers swarmed to assist, plugging in power cables and beginning repairs. Harlow exhaled, allowing herself a moment to rest. Core recharge at 50%, Keen reported. Repairs underway, but we'll need more time to fully restore functionality. Time was the enemy's greatest threat now. Scouts were already closing in, and every minute counted. Harlow stared into the dense jungle beyond the depot's perimeter. The war was far from over, but today they had a chance to fight back, to reclaim what was lost. The mech's red eyes glowed brighter, a beacon of resilience amidst the chaos. Earth's last hope was alive, moving forward. Commander Harlow gripped the controls tighter, ready for whatever came next. The battle might be relentless, but so was humanity's spirit. And the prototype war mech was their guardian, standing tall, fighting on. The jungle was alive with the distant sounds of battle as Commander Harlow settled into the mech's cockpit, her body aching, but her resolve unbroken. Repairs had been quick, but far from complete. The war machine was a wounded giant, yet it stood tall against the advancing enemy. The red glow from its eyes cut through the early morning mist, casting eerie shadows on the dense foliage. Core power at 75%, Lieutenant Keen reported. System stable, but stress levels are high. We need to conserve energy for what's coming. Harlow's gaze sharpened. The enemy wasn't retreating. If anything, their forces were consolidating for a final push. Intelligence confirmed that the enemy planned to strike Earth's remaining stronghold, a sprawling fortress nestled deep within the mountains. We can't let them reach the stronghold, Harlow said quietly. If they do, everything we've fought for will be lost. The holomap projected before her flickered, highlighting the enemy's projected advance routes. The mech was tasked with holding the jungle's edge, buying time for reinforcements to fortify the stronghold. Outside, the jungle thickened, vines hanging like traps, shadows hiding unseen threats. The mech's heavy steps crushed underbrush and small trees as it moved forward with cautious determination. Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the cockpit. Ambush detected, enemy infantry, close proximity. Harlow's heart quickened. Deploy countermeasures. The mech's onboard AI released a pulse blast, temporarily disorienting the attackers. The cockpit filled with static noise as the enemy scrambled to respond. Harlow swung the mech's arm in a wide arc, sending soldiers flying like ragdolls. The ground shook with each strike. The battle was brutal and close quarters. The enemy infantry used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, setting traps, and exploiting the jungle's natural cover. But the mech was relentless. As the skirmish wore on, Harlow noticed a change, a pattern in the enemy's movements. They were retreating toward a narrow canyon, a natural choke point. Keen, adjust course, she ordered. We'll use the terrain to our advantage. The mech shifted direction, pounding toward the canyon. The enemy pursued, unaware of the trap they were walking into. The canyon walls rose steep and unforgiving on either side. The mech took its position, waiting. As enemy vehicles and troops entered the confined space, Harlow triggered the mech's hidden weaponry, a devastating energy pulse that surged upward, igniting the canyon walls. Rock falls thundered down, blocking the enemy's escape and crushing their advance. The soldiers caught inside were trapped, their retreat cut off. A cheer echoed faintly over the comms. Enemy forces neutralized. Canyon secured. Harlow allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, but quickly refocused. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching fast. A new enemy Dreadnought-class mech, larger and more heavily armed than anything they had encountered. "Dreadnought incoming," Keen warned, tension thick in his voice. "It's heading straight for us." Harlow's pulse quickened. This was the ultimate test. The prototype war mech she piloted had been built for this moment. But could it stand against an enemy designed to crush it? She tightened her grip on the controls, feeling the mech respond beneath her. The ancient machine, despite its scars and years of neglect, was still a marvel of engineering and human determination. As the dreadnought emerged from the jungle's edge, towering like a dark mountain, the two giants faced each other. The battlefield held its breath. Harlow steadied her voice. "This is for Earth. We don't fall here." The mech charged, gears grinding and hydraulics roaring. The ground trembled as the two titans clashed, a battle not just of metal and fire, but of wills. Every strike from the enemy was met with a counter, every explosion a testament to survival. The air filled with the roar of battle, the clash of titans fighting for humanity's future. The fight was far from over, but with every blow, Commander Harlow and the prototype war mech proved that Earth's spirit could not be broken. Not yet. The dreadnought loomed over the jungle like a colossus of destruction, its armor plates gleaming coldly beneath the rising sun. Commander Harlow's heart pounded in sync with the rhythmic pounding of the mech's servos as she prepared for the final confrontation. Every system screamed for attention, overheated joints, flickering power grids, and cracked armor. But the machine held together. For now, the enemy mech unleashed a volley of heavy plasma blasts. The sky lit up with searing blue-white streaks, each one aimed to obliterate the prototype before it could even get close. Harlow maneuvered with a calculated fury, dodging and weaving between blasts that shredded the canopy above. The jungle trembled beneath their clash. She countered with a precision strike, firing the mech's pulse cannon at the dreadnought's exposed flank. The shot landed, sending sparks and twisted metal cascading down its side. The enemy staggered but retaliated immediately, swinging a massive arm like a battering ram. Harlow braced herself, gripping the controls tightly as the blow slammed into the mech's right side. The impact rattled her bones, but the machine absorbed it, the reinforced armor groaning, but intact. "You're tough," Harlow muttered, voice steady despite the chaos. "But I'm tougher." The duel escalated, each move a deadly dance. The two titans clashed amid the ruins of the jungle, trees falling like matchsticks, and the earth cracking under their weight. Every strike echoed with a deafening boom that seemed to shake the very atmosphere. Harlow's mind raced through every strategy she'd ever trained for, every lesson learned from simulations and real combat. The mech's AI offered tactical suggestions, but in this moment it was her instinct, her willpower, and sheer determination that drove the machine forward. Suddenly, a critical alert blared through the cockpit. Core temperature critical. Systems failing in 5 minutes without emergency shutdown. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. The mech's power core was overheating from the relentless battle. If it shut down here, they would lose not just the mech, but the entire front line. "Keep pushing," Harlow commanded, voice ironclad. "We end this now." She found an opening, a brief vulnerability in the dreadnought's defense. With everything she had left, she charged, delivering a crushing blow to the enemy's cockpit area. The dreadnought shuddered violently, sparks flying as systems began to fail. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The enemy mech staggered, then collapsed onto one knee. The jungle fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy fog. Harlow's mech stood over the defeated titan, breathing heavily through the cockpit speakers. She allowed herself a small weary smile. They had won. The prototype war mech had proven its worth. But victory came with a cost. The mech's systems were critical. Every warning light blinked urgently. She initiated emergency protocols and prepared to withdraw. As she guided the machine away from the battlefield, her comm crackled. "Commander, this is General Riker. Your actions have turned the tide. Reinforcements are mobilizing. Earth owes you everything." Harlow exhaled, a flood of relief washing over her. The war was far from over, but today had been a turning point. The mech was more than a machine. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and humanity's relentless spirit. Outside, the jungle began to heal under the rising sun, and the prototype war mech powered down, its red eyes dimming, but its legacy burning bright. Earth was alive, and so was the fight for its future.